The United States is getting ready to impose more pain on Russia and additional tariffs if Vladimir Putin declines Trump's offer on Ukraine. Meanwhile, the coalition of the willing is serious about deploying troops to Ukraine. Also, the United States did not impose any kind of tariffs on Russia to maintain negotiations over Ukraine. So how does the US plan to force Vladimir Putin to bring him to a negotiating table, and why didn't the US put enough pressure and impose any kind of tariffs on the Russian economy? US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, for the first time since the beginning of the Trump's administration, has made tough statements regarding Russian dictator Putin and his economy. So he says that US President Donald Trump is not interested in participating in endless negotiations over the war in Ukraine. Also, he says that Trump is ready to put pressure on Russia and the United States will not cross any kind of red lines of Ukraine or European Union. Also, Marco Rubio said that the world will know in the upcoming weeks whether Russia is ready to maintain any kind of a serious deal. Moreover, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio for the first time said that Russia has violated a ceasefire agreement in the air. So as we know, previously Ukraine and Russia and the United States have agreed to partial ceasefire deal in the air, banning air attack on the energy grip of both countries, Ukraine and Russia. Also, Ukraine and Russia have agreed to a ceasefire in the Black Sea. However, Russia, after these agreements, have been violating both agreements in the air and at sea, attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure and also civilian targets. Recently, Russia has struck Kryvyi Rih with ballistic missile, killing more than 20 people. Also, children are among those people who are being killed after this illegal strike by the Russian army using ballistic missile. So after this incident statements, for the first time, US said that US will be ready to impose additional pain on Russia. Moreover, according to Reuters, for the first time, Trump's administration have been really frustrated about the Russian actions and Vladimir Putin's unwillingness to accept ceasefire deal. So according to Reuters publication, Trump's administration officials have been really frustrated because for the first time they saw and understood that Russian dictator Putin was unwilling to accept a full ceasefire deal, and a path forward has been discussed right now among the Trump's officials, and Trump's team is getting ready to impose additional sanctions and tariffs on Russian economy because Vladimir Putin was delaying ceasefire talks. He was just giving Trump enough to declare any kind of partial victory in the air, partial ceasefire, any kind of success, but not enough to actually end the war. And he was delaying this whole process to buy more time for his army to invade and capture more Ukrainian land, and just to demonstrate his willingness to participate in ceasefire, just to demonstrate it, just to manipulate Donald Trump, but not to actually end this war. And it seems like for the first time, Trump's administration is starting to get this and to understand this Russia's negotiation tactics, and that's why Marco Rubio for the first time has said that Donald Trump is not interested in endless negotiations. And after another weeks of Russia's delaying tactics, US will be ready to impose additional sanctions and tariffs on the Russian economy. Also, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy expects the US to strengthen sanctions against Russia. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy also said that he has received positive signals and positive signs that US administration was working to tighten and strengthen sanctions against Russia. He has confirmed this information because Trump's administration has finally understood that Vladimir Putin was main obstacle to peace, but not Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin was delaying negotiations, but by buying more time for his army to invade even more Ukrainian land. Also, French President Emmanuel Macron reacted to this illegal strike of Russia on Kryvyi Rih. He said that Russia is mocking US President Trump's proposal on a ceasefire by targeting Ukrainian energy and civilian infrastructure. He also said that Ukraine has agreed to a full ceasefire deal for 30 days. However, Russia declined this offer. That's why President Macron is confident that Russia is the main obstacle to peace. And also, as we know, French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer have been working on the coalition of the willing of European countries ready to deploy troops to Ukraine if necessary. In case of a big ceasefire deal, the United Kingdom, France and other European allies are ready to deploy troops to Ukraine in case of ceasefire deal to properly enforce this deal and deter Russia from another attack in the future. It is also an open question whether European allies are ready to deploy troops to Ukraine without the ceasefire deal, because Russia has been declining this initiative and has been declining any kind of a full ceasefire proposals. On the other hand, we have another statement from French President Emmanuel Macron. He said that he is also ready to deploy troops to Ukraine without Russia's approval. So we have wait and see whether European allies are ready to deploy troops even without Russia's green lighting this, and even without a peace, without this ceasefire deal, which seems to be so far away from now. And this question should be really considered by the European allies and also other allies around the globe. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump is not ready to negotiate also limiting tariffs on Europe, even if Europe does not pay enough money for the United States' willingness to negotiate. So US President Donald Trump is not ready to negotiate limiting his own tariffs. As we know, US President Trump has imposed tariffs against all countries around the globe, except Russia and other limited amount of countries, because he thinks that this move will increase domestic production in the United States and will force companies around the globe to return production to the United States to improve and also to create more jobs in the US. However, the global economists are confident that this move will only rise prices for the Americans and will increase inflation in the United States and put America's economy in a recession. However, Donald Trump has been playing golf in his golf club, international golf club in Florida during this breaking news around the globe and high-stakes discussions. That's why it seems that he is not ready to cancel his decision on the tariffs. And also, he says that it will be important for US President Donald Trump to negotiate a better deal with other allies around the globe. Also, there have been another statement from the White House officials. The White House official said that the US did not impose any kind of tariffs on Russia, just not to harm negotiations over Ukraine between Russia and the United States. However, these negotiations have reached a stalemate because Russia has not agreed to a full ceasefire deal. That's why Trump's administration should impose tariff sanctions and other means which were announced by US President Donald Trump and also other members of his team. And in the end of our conversation, we will cover recent protests in the United States against Trump's policies and Elon Musk's. So after this weekend, many Ukrainians, thousands of Americans have been protesting in the United States against Trump's tariffs and Trump's inner circle decisions against Elon Musk and other not very popular decision regarding his cutting social aid, social security and other policies, as they have been marching through the United States and protesting against Donald Trump's administration. Also, we have heard another criticism of Trump's decision from the Democrats, from the former US President Barack Obama and former US Vice President Kamala Harris. And also there have been another protests with demonstrations which were call hands off and to protect democracy around the United States. And also it seems like US President Donald Trump is deciding to remove Elon Musk from this office. Politico recently reported that Elon Musk would be excluded from his position because he will return to business as usual as the head of the X company and as the head of the Tesla company. However, it seems like the Elon Musk's ineffectiveness in his position in the office and also the anger among another Trump's top members of his team have forced Trump to act and to also to force him to leave the White House, and also his interesting statement on social media and his inappropriate statement towards another US politicians have forced Donald Trump to make such decision. But we will have to wait to see how these things can really turn out and play out with Donald Trump's making such decision, departuring, and also Donald Trump is firing Elon Musk from his office, as even enough any other protests are turning against him in the United States. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, stay with us on YouTube, and glory to Ukraine.